This is the English language section of the Radio Free Europe. We broadcast today from the European Parliament in Brussels. And my guest today is Maria Walsh, a freshly elected MEP from Ireland, from Midlands, my colleague in the EPP group, the Christian Democrat group, and a member of the Committee on Employment and Social Affairs, as well as the Delegation for Relations with the United States, and an alternate member of the Commission for Fisheries, as well as Committee on Civil Liberties. What surprised you the most on arriving here in Brussels?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me. It's a great honour. We were sharing off camera just the connectivity we have between your country and my country and the European Union as a whole, so this is exciting. What surprised me the most is how we sit within the EPP, we sit within our political groups, but when you sit around a table very similar to this, we must work on negotiation and compromise. In order to bring things forward for our citizens, we have to never leave the table without finding some sort of solution, and it's solutions-based versus I guess maybe pointing fingers and waiting for things to happen on their own. And that was a great surprise, because you often read of what politics looks like. So I'm a first-time politician, whereas when you're in the heart of it and you see the ebbs and flows of how people work together, and you got to respect, while we sit in the same group, we come from very different backgrounds, but we have to be respectful because we need to represent our citizens to the best of our abilities. And that's been a great learning curve. Plus, I'm in the honeymoon phase, so everything is bright and shiny and new, which is fun.
Sure. This must be a tense time in Irish politics, because if Brexit happens on Halloween, Ireland will be the country in the EU 27 that is affected the most.
Yeah, it is. It's a very trying time. And I'm really conscious, you do hear buzzwords in the media, and I'm always conscious when I talk about Brexit or when we discuss Brexit, it's done so at the very core of the impact it will have on Ireland as a whole, on EU. You know, we're not just going to see the ripple effect in Ireland, it's going to be right throughout the world, if not even our continent. But north and south of Ireland, it's a trying time. You know, I have constituents, my constituency is Midlands Northwest, so in terms of my region, we are on the border, not non-border right now, but it could potentially be in a number of days. But it looks like
we are very close to a deal. This customs partnership to complement the already agreed participation of the North in the single market would allow the status quo to continue, i.e. no physical border across the island, while Northern Ireland also enjoying a, what is it, £12 billion subsidy per annum from London. That would be all right, wouldn't it?
I mean, it's not a bad package, but we also have to appreciate the fact that if a hard border goes in, if the island as a whole is treated separately, our neighbours want to divorce not just Ireland, but the EU as a whole. And we need to be protective of the fact that, so if the solution is 12 billion to ensure that peace and our Good Friday Agreement remains intact, then I personally think that's 12 billion well spent.
Under the deal that Boris and Leo Varadkar agreed, both the country of origin and customs issues would be checked in the ports of Northern Ireland. In other words, to the naked eye, not much would change.
I guess it depends on what's going to happen over the next coming days in terms of the actual infrastructure that we see. So we do, you know, I heard that, I read that too, in terms of how the checks will happen at port level, but it can't just happen at port level in Northern Ireland. It also has to happen at every port, I'd imagine, around the island of Ireland, simply because of the way, well, particularly on the East Coast, simply the way goods are coming in and out. That might be different. We might just funnel everything through Northern Ireland. But if you look at medications, if you look at food, that will have a delay on them arriving into their final destination. So it's going to be interesting how that plays out, and the infrastructure that they put in place with that. I know Prime Minister Johnson was sharing the digitalisation of how we do border checks, and it won't be a hard border, it'll be you know, a couple of miles away, and you know, again, it's all lofty ideas, but we need to see how it impacts. And I don't think, you know, one of my constituents asked me over the weekend, you know, come October 31st, we're never going to hear about Brexit again. And I was like, absolutely not. This is only what we're going to see for the next few days is only the tipping point for what our mandate is going to look like for the next 5 years. So then we get into the intricate details of how the infrastructure will look like at whatever port it comes through.
I mean, even with a deal, the UK will then need a free trade agreement with the EU, which, and by then it'll be a non-member, and I don't imagine that the UK will be able to forge free trade agreements with others before others know what its relationship to the EU is, right?
And I mean, it's extraordinary special that our President Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has appointed or designate Phil Hogan, an Irishman, into the Commission of Trade. It is going to be, as you say, the detail is going to be exceptionally important, because if we don't get one right, that's a ripple effect for every other trade deal that we have coming down through. So, you know, I think there's a number of interesting things in the sense of, is this going to push the conversation for a united Ireland? Is this going to push other countries to look at leaving the European Union as a whole? This is like what we hear in the populism rise, but we need to be careful. We need to be very, very careful.
In your view, what would be the event that could trigger referenda in both the North and in the Republic on unification?
And if the peace process, the Good Friday Agreement, is not held within the confines that it is now, if any bit of that is depleted, if any bit of that is not upheld to, then I would imagine we'll see
that new IRA is preparing spectacular actions of a violent sort if a hard Brexit were to happen.
Yeah. You know, if that. Again, going back to when you're first asked, it's how do I talk about Brexit? I'm 32. I moved to Ireland when I was 7. My parents are both Irish. I never, outside of history books and movies and stories of past, I've never seen troubles on the island of Ireland. And to imagine sitting in this fine, beautiful institution that was built on the safety of our citizens and democracy, to find ourselves in 2019 to go back to a potential warfare and homeland terrorism is breathtakingly sad. If that is true, if those reports are true, we are in for a very, very difficult, and it's not just Ireland in a silo situation.
But it puts extra responsibility on the two prime ministers to make the deal work.
Oh, for definite. It puts responsibilities on everybody sitting in the European Parliament. It puts responsibilities on every decision maker at every department level, and every citizen, because you can't just have politicians making decisions in rooms like our Prime Minister or Taoiseach or Prime Minister Johnson. We also have to make sure that our citizens feel transparent in the information that we're providing them, and B, that they feel safe in the fact that North and South don't ever step back into the fact that
there's much talk in Britain about whether or not any deal will pass the House of Commons, but they forget that it has to pass in this Parliament too.
Yeah. Democracy is alive and well.
Are you satisfied that the EU has stuck with Ireland, with its member?
Oh my! If the EU 27 is what we're referring to it now. If Michel Barnier and the task force didn't align with Ireland as much as it has, I don't know where we'd be.
What does it feel like to have the entire continent behind you and the British, for once, being in a different position?
See, if I was a seasoned politician, I would give you a politically correct answer, but I'm going to give you a truthful answer. It is remarkable to, as a first-time MEP, to sit in the hemicycle and hear from various cultures, languages, backgrounds, talk about Ireland as if they were wearing the green jersey themselves. That's extraordinary, and that's just from a very emotive side. When you hear people in EPP group talk about Ireland as if it's their mother tongue, it's remarkable. But I think we're all being very cautious and careful in the fact that if we didn't find unity in this, then we don't know the ripple effects it would have across the EU. So
and solidarity with Ireland is one thing. It's solidarity with our own single market, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think we all have to be mindful. We have to make sure our countries are prosperous and our European Union is working, and that comes down to making sure our single market is protected, as well as peace. You know, they're two very important things that our citizens are directly affected with.
Sure. You were born in the United States, so I'm very pleased that you've joined the EU-USA delegation, which I'm happy to be chairing
and
now.
You know what? I don't envy you, because you have a tough task ahead of you, and I know it's a committee, it's a delegation that was very hard to get onto. But as a US-born citizen, I'm really proud of the fact that I'm sitting on that. We have some trying times in terms of 2020 presidentials coming up, and we'll see what midterms. The Airbus sanctions coming in. Yes, yes.
What do you think are the other most pressing issues between the EU and the US?
I mean, outside of trade deals, democracy. Democracy has to be protected, and we have to do everything we can to lead. You know, everything that happens, I seen in the EU campaign in Ireland, everything that happens in the US, there is a wave naturally through the forms of social media, and we need to make sure populism doesn't arise from a turbulent president. You know, I'm a US-born citizen, so I make sure my absentee ballot my voice is heard and my vote is counted. That's really important. I mean, otherwise, again, the word democracy doesn't get protected. It is, let's just say, hopefully the silver lining of someone like President Trump within the position that he's in. If the silver lining...
I have a feeling you didn't vote for him.
I didn't vote for him, no. But as a political representative sitting on the US delegation, I must be respectful of the fact that he holds one of the most powerful positions in the world. But I also need to be mindful that citizens' rights, my fellow even LGBTQI activists, we need to make sure if we're going to live in a safe world, everybody needs to buy into that message. And it's going to be some interesting times coming up.
Yep. What would be your theory about the fact that you had an influx of my compatriots from Poland, and it was entirely friendly and caused no political reverberations in Ireland, whereas in Britain, where the absolute numbers were of course bigger, but proportionately it was similar, it contributed to Brexit?
Yeah, you know, I think about this quite often, because on the Libe committee we talk about the rule of law and migration and economic migrants versus refugees and how that looks like. You know, for Ireland it would be quite. It wouldn't be correct if we're a country that our tourism line is on Céad Míle Fáilte, so 1,000 welcomes. We've also, as a diaspora, as an Irish-grown community, have moved and built communities right throughout the world, not just here in Ireland, or not just in Ireland. So for us, the Polish community has built buildings, has built communities. I know in my own, in Shrew and Headford area, we've gorgeous families that are adding culture to our schools. And it's important that if we're an EU body, then we're flowing, that the free movement of people and their cultures are there. Obviously, we have to look at what the sense of belonging is for our own Irish culture. But that gets enriched by cultures coming in and adding to that. And perhaps that's a very lofty, new age way of thinking. But for me, you know, we're living in a time where if we're not welcoming to those that are, be it most vulnerable through refugee crisis, or want to build a better lives for themselves with perhaps anticipation to move back to their
well, we want our Poles back.
Yeah, but I mean, we would love to if Irish move back too. I mean, I'm an Irish. I was born in the States but educated in Ireland. I went back out to the States and I moved back to Ireland, and now I'm very fortunate to represent a portion of it. So I think the free movement of people is exceptionally important, and I think it's fantastic. It enriches our culture, and hopefully they won't move back too soon.
Am I right in thinking that you've declared yourself a member of the LGBT community?
Yes, you're correct, yes.
What would be your message to the leader of the Polish ruling party, which has made LGBT and the threat of LGBT destroying our Christian civilization, end quote, in this election campaign that we've just had. Are you a threat to the Christian civilization?
I would hope not. I mean, my spirituality is just important to me as the next.
Oh, no. He said that there is no spirituality outside of Christianity. That everything else is nihilism.
Yeah. Well, people are funny, aren't they? I'm trying to be politically correct here now, sir. You're getting me in trouble. I think as an LGBTQI activist and community member, it would be heartbreaking if someone pointed their finger at me and said I didn't bring a richness to my community as another did. I think the fact that we are building and growing a world that everybody can bring their whole selves to work and should be it whatever gender, creed, orientation, or colour of their skin. I'm actually, I talk about this, or I was challenged about this at various points over my own European election campaign, simply because I'm a pioneer, so I abstain from alcohol and other substance. I made that choice through making my confirmation in my community. You're
also an army reservist,
right?
I
am a Catholic. I practice. I am a Catholic. I go to mass as often as
Archbishop of Krakow has said that we are threatened by LGBT plague.
Yeah.
Are you part of the plague?
I'm not part of the plague. The plague of equal love, perhaps, but not in any sort of negative sense. But you know, it's heartbreaking because in Ireland, 40 years ago, we decriminalised.
Sure, but what is the Irish Catholic Church's attitude to you and to people like you and to this movement?
Yeah, I think it's quite mixed. I mean, realistically, looking at the Roman Catholic Church, if we're not welcoming to our community members, be it, again, whatever gender orientation, colour, or creed, then our churches are seeing smaller numbers sitting in the pews.
But you had a famous referendum on...
We did. We had two famous referendums. In 2015, we had the marriage equality referendum, and just this past year, we've had the repeal the eighth, which allowed push through legislation for women to be protective of their bodies and their rights. And now, that didn't just a flick of a switch and everybody was on board, and we believed in women having the ability to do whatever it is they wish to do with their bodies, as well as marriage equality. We're far away from same-sex couples getting married in their churches. I understand that. But again, I get asked all the time on a personal level, how can I be gay and believe in women's rights as well as call myself a Catholic? But it's like politics. If you're not sitting around the table, if you're not showing any sort of visibility that...
So you are gay, but you continue to be Catholic?
Yes. Well, and I always say when I get to the pearly gates and I have a good chat to the man above or woman above, whomever it is, then we'll figure out based off who I am as a person, the impact that I hopefully in a positive manner have made on the world.
But what does your priest in Ireland tell you about you?
Oh, we're good friends. Yeah, we just actually welcomed Untitled Chapter to my very small community, and my parish priest was the epicenter of that welcome. So it's not as if he snubs me on the street. He's actually very welcoming, and perhaps for him he prays that I will come back to what others may deem as a normalised couple. But for me, I think, and this is where I'd love for us to be, that we're looking at people as people. We're not looking at them as...
So civilization hasn't broken down in Ireland?
No, and I mean...
And they even voted for you.
yeah. Who would imagine in a very rural part of Ireland? But what is interesting is, you know, we talked off air about the Rose of Tralee. So this International Rose of Tralee Festival that was deemed press-wide as a very Catholic, very traditional. I was their first openly gay rose. I didn't break the country. I didn't break the festival, and hopefully I won't break the European Parliament. So it just goes to show you. And you're not even left wing. You're in the EPP group. Yeah. So it just goes to show you where you could be many different things, but you're still trying to put your best foot forward. So, so regards to your
Mr. Kaczynski.
Thank you very much.
He's a confirmed bachelor, by the way.
Oh, great. Well, I wish him adieu and best wishes, and hopefully at some point when we sit around the table that I can coax him onto my side of thinking versus his side. Yeah, it's heartbreaking though, isn't it? It's for me, I think, you know, we have young people growing up in a world that is conflicting times. So do they feel comfortable in their own skin? Potentially not when we have the rise of disbelief or populism in some senses. But you know, I even look at in terms of LGBTQI rights in Ireland, Northern Ireland, we still have a lot of work to do. Southern Ireland, we've passed the marriage equality bill, but we still have an awful lot of work with gender pay gaps and IVF treatments and how we're really being protected. I'm being told to stop.
Catholic Ireland is now more liberal than Northern Ireland, huh?
Yeah, it is.
Which is a new situation,
It
isn't
is a new situation. Hence the reason why just past weekend I was speaking at a Fine Gael event, and Taoiseach Leo Varadkar was there. I was about to introduce him, and I said, isn't it fabulous to live in a time where, you know, in past you would have heard Ireland is punching above its weight. So that ism of, you know, we're a small island, do we really make impact? Whereas now, with the help of our EU 26 colleagues, we are now a strong EU 27. And far from it that we're punching above our weight, we're on equal par. And we're driving message of social change as well as economic proportions and balance. And long may it continue, and hopefully not too many Polish will move back to Ireland because we really like them here, and hopefully your leaders will just look at a whole person versus just one aspect of them.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to working with you here in Brussels, in the EPP group and in the delegation for relations between the EU and the US. This has been the English language section of the Free Radio Europe. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, thank you.